Hi everyone, I'm Gautam aka The Seeker of Wisdom. I'm a manifestation coach and today we're going to be talking about inner conversations. Now before I do so, I'd like to remind you guys I'm available for coaching. I offer one-on-ones, courses and masterclasses. I have a free Facebook group and a paid Facebook group, and last but not least, I also have a mailing list. If you guys need any information on any of those things that I have mentioned, feel free to email me or DM me via Instagram for more information and I'll be happy to guide you guys on those. And without further ado guys, let's get to it. So I wanted to talk about inner conversations as part of my new playlist where I'm exploring the basics of manifesting your SP. And this is one of those techniques that I would consider being Neville certified, simply due to the fact that he has spoken about the effectiveness of this technique in many of his lectures as well as his book, The Power of Awareness. Now he referred to it as inner speech, but rest assured, he's talking about the exact same thing as inner conversations. So inner conversations is nothing more than having a conversation in our mind with somebody else. And by within, I mean within the mind. If you really think about it, we do have conversations with folks all the time. We do have inner conversations with our friends, our family members, our colleagues, our boss, for example. Sometimes these conversations can also be unfavorable. We refer to them as being mental arguments. You can have mental arguments constantly with somebody because of something that happened at your workplace, for example, or something that happened at an event, and you can have mental arguments from that premise. And if a person did not do something for you, or if they did something against you, you can also have mental arguments with this person based on such events as well. It's a pretty common thing that many people actually do even without consciously recognizing it, because it's so common for them to do so. It's such a normal thing for them to do that they don't even recognize that A, it's unfavorable, and B, they're not even sometimes aware of the fact that they are mentally arguing because they are so comfortable in that state. And that's what we want to get aware of and change, essentially. Because with SP especially, one thing that I've noticed in some of my clients as well as my friends is that the idea of mentally arguing with your SP is such a common thing, but when it comes to having favorable conversations, people kind of just stare into blank space. Like one of my friends just asked me, well, how exactly do I have an inner conversation with my SP, because I really don't know how. And I was kind of puzzled by that, to be honest with you guys. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know how? You just have an inner conversation with this person. And she was like, I'm sorry, but it's not just that straightforward. And that got me thinking, okay, why isn't it straightforward? Because this is not the first person who kind of told me that it's a bit of a challenge to have an inner conversations with your SP, especially when it comes to the favorable part of it. Because another client of mine recently told me, well, I just can't seem to have a favorable inner conversation with my SP, but I can have a mental argument with this person really easily. But it's just that when it comes to favorable conversations, I am struggling a bit here. So that kind of made me explore, why is this the case with people? Because if it's just a one-off thing, like I wouldn't really think too much about it. But when it seemed to have been a pattern with different folks from different walks of life, that's when I started to think, okay, well, why is this happening? So the bottom line is this: folks are unable to wrap their minds around how their SP is going to say all of those wonderful things that they could potentially hear in the inner conversations, simply because they are comparing those things against what they are witnessing in the 3D. In other words, they are just too focused on the 3D. And that's the simplest reason, that they are too focused on the 3D, so much so that their inner world seems unbelievable to them. They are unable to believe that it can be that good. So they are thinking that, okay, this is too good to be true. So how am I going to experience this? I just can't wrap my mind around that. Therefore, they kind of just give up on their endeavor, or they really struggle with that because they are just unable to wrap their mind around it, so much so that it becomes a block for them. And thus what ends up happening in some cases is that they try to make the conversations quote unquote realistic. So they try to add bits and pieces where their SP might say a few things, and that might work to your advantage in some cases, but in other cases they really water down the quality of conversations that they may have with their SP, because they want to be, again, quote unquote realistic. And by realistic they mean, okay, I'm trying to integrate the version that I'm seeing in the 3D with the version that I would want to be, and I'm kind of like trying to reach a middle ground, if you will. So that is another thing some people do. So bottom line is, again, they're just too focused on the 3D. They're just too focused on the 3D to the point where whatever that they could potentially hear in their mind with their SP becomes too hard for them to wrap their minds around with. And as a result, they keep going, well, how is this going to happen? And I just don't believe this. That becomes a roadblock for them, which stops them from having any further inner conversations. Because mind you, this happens pretty early on. For some, actually for many to be honest, this is probably happening very early on in the process, that they kind of give up on the whole idea of having inner conversations. And that is where we need to recognize that, okay, hey, whatever that I'm doing right now does not need to be in any way, shape or form connected to the 3D. Let me say that again. Whatever that you do in your inner world in any way, shape or form does not have to be connected to the 3D. And this is very important because again, like, people try to have conversations based on the current set of circumstances with the SP. But I always tell people, you don't. You can have conversations from the premise that your desires are already done. So how would that look like with SP? You have inner conversations with your SP from the premise that you're already together with them, that you're already happily married to them, that you're already in a committed relationship with them. And this is the key there, is to have conversations from the premise that you already have your desires. And this applies to having a job as well as maybe achieving a certain status in terms of wealth as well. You have conversations with your friends or your colleagues or your boss from the premise that you already have what you want. So this goes across all the people, not just SP. But since we are focusing on SP in this video, what would that type of conversation look like? What kind of conversations would you have if you're already together with your person? What kind of conversations would really come out of it? How loving would they sound? How would you be greeted every day? What would they say to you? How would they cherish you? And what kind of words would they use to call you? Because when you're in a relationship, you wouldn't just use your name, for example. You would say like, okay, honey, babe, darling. And so how would they address you? Start with like simple things like that. And what ends up happening is that you would find that these kinds of questions, this line of thinking will make you have inner conversations with ease, because this is making you think, and this allows you to process these conversations even before you have them in your mind. And mind you, you don't have to just close your eyes and quickly have an inner conversation. If you can do that, great. But with many people, I know kind of struggle with that. So if you're unable to do that, it's okay. Be easy on yourself. Don't get frustrated in this process. It's a process. It's okay if you're not like immediately good at it. Practice makes perfect here. So start with those kinds of prompts. Okay, how would I feel like if they were to say certain loving things to me? What kind of feelings would I experience in my body, for example? How would they address me? What kind of conversations would we have? How is it like, are we having funny conversations all the time? Or are we having like sarcastic banters all the time? Or are we those like lovey-dovey couples where we are always telling each other like how much we love each other? You can have conversations in any way possible. It's not just restricted to just one or the other. You can have conversations in any number of ways. The possibilities here are endless. But broadly speaking, there are 3 different ways that you can have a inner conversation with an SP. So the first way is, as I mentioned, like you can have those like lovey-dovey conversations. Oh, I love you too, you're the best thing that has ever happened to me, things like that. This is where I think like a lot of people struggle, because they may not even have heard such conversations from the SP. And I know it might be a bit of a challenge for you to wrap your mind around that, but I always tell my clients the following: treat your ideal version and the current 3D version as 2 separate entities. See them as 2 completely different folks, and you are manifesting the one that you are seeing within. And if you persist in that version long enough, that version of your SP has to be pushed out. Every time when you are hearing loving things from the inner version of your SP, know that that is the version that you are manifesting, not the 3D. And what this simply does is that it makes you more receptive towards the favorable things that you are listening to from your SP, especially the lovey-dovey bits. If you are struggling with that, simply treat them as 2 separate entities. The 3D is a separate version, and the one that you are talking to all the time in your mind is a separate version that is in no way, shape or form connected to the one in the 3D. And if you persist long enough with the version that is within, that version of your SP has to be pushed out into the 3D as well. So that is the justification that I gave myself. That is the justification that I give my clients whenever they are struggling with this specific issue where they just can't wrap their mind around the idea that their SP might say all those loving things to them. So the second type of conversation is a conversation of reassurance. So this is common when you are experiencing some sort of a doubt or a fear. You basically have a conversation of reassurance where your SP is speaking to you in a reassuring way to tell you that you are the one and only one in their lives, and that you are already where you want to be. And again, you basically have this conversation from the premise that you already are in a committed relationship with this person, or you already are in a blissful marriage with this person. And you have that conversation from that premise, not from the current state that you guys are in the 3D. And this is really important because every technique that you're doing must reiterate the fact that you're already experiencing the end state of mind, and it should not in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion at least, reflect your current circumstances in the 3D. Again, we are not trying to be quote unquote realistic here. We are trying to be in the end state as much as possible so that we may manifest what we want in the quickest and easiest way possible. So if I were you, I would make it a habit to have conversations, be it of any kind, but particularly for this one, to have it from the idea that you already have your end desire. So whenever you are hearing words of reassurance from your SP, you have it from the premise that they are already your husband, or that they are already your boyfriend, or that they are already your wife or girlfriend. You have it from that premise. They might not even be talking to you currently, or they might have said no to you. They might be with a 3P now. None of those things matters. If those things bother you, you go within and you simply have conversations of reassurance where the ideal version of them, not the current 3D version of them, but the ideal version of them is reassuring you that you are the one and only one for them, and then they love you with all their heart and soul, and they are highlighting all the good qualities that you have and how lucky they are to have you as their partner. And basically you just hear these words of reassurance and love, and you just immerse yourself in it. And once you just come out of that conversation, you go by your day, no checking 3D, no doubting the process, and you do this as many times as you need to. And it doesn't have to be the exact same conversation, mind you. You can have it in many different ways if you want to, and it doesn't have to have the exact same things every single conversation. But as long as you feel better, as long as you feel reassured, and again, as long as it's from the end state, as long as it reflects the end state, that's all that matters. The last type of conversation simply just reiterates what we spoke of in the first two conversations, and that is nothing more than having day-to-day conversations. And as we said earlier, we are going to be having conversations not from the current state, but from the end state, that we already have our desires, that we are already in that committed relationship, that we are already in the marriage that we want to be. So basically, this third category of conversations simply just reiterates that much more. So take the premise that you and your SP have just moved into a new apartment, and you guys are discussing, okay, what kind of couch do we want to buy, or what kind of color do we want to use when painting the walls, and how does it fit in with the overall aesthetic or the vibe of the living space. Or you guys can be shopping at IKEA, for example, or you guys are going to grocery shopping. What kind of conversations do you have? Because mind you, these are day-to-day things that you might be doing with your SP. Or maybe you guys are doing your finances together. What kind of conversations are you having then? So when you have conversations like this, and mind you, you don't have to know what your SP would say, because again, when you think that way, you're probably thinking about the 3D version of them. The idea is just to have a conversation, to just put your thoughts out there, and more importantly, receive a favorable reply, when you do say certain things. So let's say you're discussing financing and you're talking about, okay, this is how I want our finances to be managed. You're not going to be hearing SP say, okay, well, that's great, but I actually wanted this instead. No, that's not how you go about it. You actually say, okay, hear your SP saying, that's a great idea, and I'm going to be contributing towards that. And so you are actually going to be reinforcing the idea that whatever comes out of your mouth is actually so awesome that your SP has no choice but to agree to you. That's the kind of premise that you are coming at it from. So if I were you, I would always make it a point to receive a favorable reply from my SP. So what this is doing is that it's really normalizing all these things. You are just having a day-to-day, regular, chill kind of conversation, because mind you, as much as loving and reassurance-based conversations are very important, you're not always going to be having such conversations. Like if you always hear from your person that, okay, hey, I love you so much, you're the one and only one for me, at one point it's going to get boring. It's going to get repetitive. Your mind is going to be like, okay, we get it, like stop, right? You don't want to overdo it, is what I'm saying. Try to strike a balance, because if you look at your parents, for example, or if you look at any loving couple, for example, yeah, sure, they tell them that they love each other, but they're not always going to be like shoving it down that person's throat. They are going to be talking about other things. Maybe, hey, have you seen the news? news, or did you watch this movie, or maybe we should go for this movie. Okay, maybe what should I get for dinner today? And these are the types of conversations that a regular couple will have. So incorporate those types of conversations into your inner conversation practice as well, is what I'm trying to say. And this also desensitizes you. It normalizes the idea of living together with your SP, sharing the same space as your SP for extended periods of time. Because for a lot of people out there, when they're talking to their SP, chances are they're not probably living together with them yet. So what this does, like when we are talking about day-to-day conversations, what it does is that it desensitizes us to the idea of living together with our SPs. And when we're talking about day-to-day conversations, it really makes it like, okay, I am living together with my SP, and this is such a normal thing for me. So I'm not going to be putting it on a pedestal. So that's another advantage there as well. So these are the things that I would focus on when I'm manifesting SP through inner conversations. I'm not just going to be focusing on loving conversations and conversations of reassurance. I'm also going to be focusing on the day-to-day aspects of living together with my SP and being in a wonderful, committed relationship with my SP. And if you tell me that, okay, despite all of the things that I've mentioned right now, you still might struggle to have an inner conversation with your SP, then what I normally tell my clients to do is I tell them to script the entire conversation out. I tell them to write down all the things that you're going to tell them and all the replies that you're going to receive from your SP as well. And you simply just read it. And as you're reading, you're not going to be just thinking from your voice, but you're also going to be reading the SP bits of the conversation in their voice, even without you realizing in some cases. So this kind of serves as a crutch until and when you do get to the point where inner conversation comes natural for you. Because like visualization, it's like a muscle. When you practice it, it becomes better. When people tell me they can't visualize, I go, yes, you can. It's just that you have not practiced it in a while. For some people, they do have an aptitude to visualize very vividly, but for others, it needs to be practiced, and that's okay. But make no mistake, these are abilities that you can certainly hone in on, and you can certainly strengthen them. It's not like it's only reserved for a certain group of people. We all have the ability to imagine. We all have the ability to create what we want using our mind. So cut out all the distractions, come up with a speech, and just read it daily. Or you can simply go in the much more simpler route. You don't even have to have a back and forth like conversation like a script, but you can just have a letter from their perspective to yourself. That is technically an inner conversation as well. So you can just hear them tell you how much they love you, again from the premise that you're already together with them. So if you are aiming for marriage, I would say go beyond the idea of marriage. When you write the letter, write it from the perspective that you are celebrating your 1-year anniversary with them. When you are in a committed relationship, maybe you are talking about 6 months anniversary, for example, and you basically hear them tell you how much they love you, how blessed they feel to be in a relationship with you. And what this does is that it anchors you in the idea that, okay, this is already yours. You're not manifesting it to make it true, but this is already yours. You are being one with your end state, because as Neville says, even nearness implies separation. That's the way I would deal with it. If I'm unable to have a quick inner conversation with my SP, I would just script these things out and read them out instead, until to the point where I'm able to carry out these conversations naturally. So guys, we've come to this end of this video. If this video resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Turn on the bell notification so that you guys will know when I upload a new video every single week. We are still doing that giveaway for one lucky subscriber who's going to win a free 1-hour coaching call. All you have to do is follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And when the channel reaches 1,111 subscribers, I'm going to be announcing that giveaway winner. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.